Welcome. Good morning to this chilly second day of November. The agenda for today is just MARC from scratch. We are going to use the MARC template that is available in Evergreen, Indiana to build a record and catalog a book with the assumption, we know it's not true, but for this thing, for today, assume that there is not already a record in the catalog and we cannot find it anywhere else. My name is Britta Dorsey. I am the Development Support Administrator for Evergreen, Indiana. I love cataloging, authorities, all the fun stuff. So for resources today, everything in today's presentation, all of the information was taken from either the Evergreen Indiana Cataloging Procedures Guide, the Library of Congress MARC 21 format for bibliographic records, or OCLC Bib Formats and Standards websites. These are the resources for you to go back and it's like, oh, wait, what does that subfield do again? But the primary one is the Cataloging Procedures Guide because it builds upon and customizes certain tags or subfields for Evergreen, Indiana. So while everything is based off of the Library of Congress and some OCLC, specifics, if there are any, should be found in the Evergreen, Indiana Cataloging Procedures Guide. Also wanted to link the Cataloging Interest Group playlist on our YouTube channel. I try to upload these videos, so if anyone wants to go back and look or weren't able to make it to the live session, they can go and watch it and still receive this information. Also, the useful websites for catalogers. This is kind of a live document that I try to put together the most useful resources for you as catalogers, whether it's about RDA, understanding MARC 21 a little more, authorities, and cataloging based on format. Before we start looking at the templates in the actual book, I want to point out some of the formatting that I am using today. In the Enhanced MARC editor, the undefined indicators, when we talk about undefined first and second indicators, they are represented by blanks. So if if an indicator is undefined, in the Enhanced MARC editor, it is going to remain blank. Delimiters are represented by double daggers, which helps separate subfields. In the flat text editor, undefined indicators are represented by backward slashes, one backward slash for each indicator. And then delimiters are represented by $signs. The subfield samples that I have in the presentation today are written in flat text format. So spaces that might be found like in our procedures guide, just to help with readability, are not there. And then for the tags, I have not included all of the indicator and subfield codes for some tags, because I chose to omit the ones that are less likely to be used in Evergreen and also want to focus on the ones that would be used in this particular instance. So please use those resources if you want to look at more specific information about a tag and those indicator and subfield codes. All right, so first let's pull up a MARC template because that's the whole point of today. When we know we have to create a record from scratch, we use the MARC templates. We can access them from the Cataloging top nav menu under the Create New MARC Record. So I'm going to be switching between the presentation and Evergreen. So let's bring up the Create New MARC Record. All right. I'll probably try and not be so. So when we access this screen from the drop-down, we want to select the template that best matches your item in hand. If you do not see a template for your item, select the one that matches the most or the closest to your item and then adjust it. I know we don't have a template for vinyl records. I believe I've heard some catalogers use the music CD template and then just adjust it for those vinyl records. What template would you use for a board game? Question. I would use the Realia game template that is available. That'll probably give you the most commonly used fields for that item type. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat as we go along and I'll try and get to them. So in this book template, which is what we selected for today's example, we have the most commonly used MARC tags already listed. There is some pre-entered punctuation to help you get started, and subfields for certain tags have been supplied based on their frequent use. You can also see the 3, 3, 6, 7, and 8 RDA tags have already been filled in, so we are going to skip over those today. We have the option to use the enhanced MARC editor, which is what is in this image example, or the flat text editor. It's whatever works best for you. For today, we will primarily work in the enhanced MARC editor because it just might be easier to see where the spaces go when adding punctuation and such, but I might slip in a flat text screenshot here or there. And you will likely not use all of the tags that are included in this template or any template, and that's okay. These are just to give you a head start when creating a record from scratch. Let's pull up our book template now. Comment punctuation is actually the biggest question. I think I've included some information about punctuation. If I didn't write it on the slide, I will hopefully comment on it. So we have access the create a new MARC record screen. I already have the book MARC template selected from this list. So I'm going to click load. And here we are. Right now for the create MARC record to switch between the enhanced MARC editor and the flat text editor, we just check mark this button. This is really useful if you happen to prefer to catalog in the flat text editor, but if you need to work on the fixed fields, it's so much easier when you are in the enhanced MARC editor. So here is our template. We have a couple subfields already, like for the 300 physical description or physical characteristics, and a couple others. I can already see one or two that we will not use for this example. All right, today's cataloging subject. Let's look at our item. Today, we are looking at Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling. It is a hardcover, and it is approximately 24 centimeters in height. But when we have the item in hand, what information can we just pull directly from the item? Ooh. The front cover of this item is telling us the title of the book and the author. The spine may show us, or at least for this example, it does show us the title, the last name of the author, and the name of the publisher. And the back cover shows us the ISBN, another standard identifier, and a review. We're not going to use the review today, but I wanted to point it out because it's there. The title page, which is generally where we retrieve our title and author information, also shows us the name of the illustrator and the name of the publisher. The title page verso, or TP verso, in our item has quite a bit of information. We have more publication information, ISBN, Library of Congress data, edition statement, and some CIP data. The CIP, or cataloging in process data, is data that has been prepared by the Library of Congress for titles that have yet to be published. This data allows us to catalog the item ahead of us receiving the actual item. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that some of this data may change upon publication. It's important to look at the CIP data, but use the information that is actually on the item, like the title page, to enter information. This is a list of tags that are required to create a core level bibliographic record. It's the equivalent of entering a 7 in the encoding level fixed field. We always want to strive for full level bibliographic records, though, in Evergreen, Indiana. I've included the link to the Library of Congress MARC 21 National Full and Minimal Requirements for Bibliographic Records if you'd like to take a look. For today, we are focusing on the list provided in the Evergreen Indiana Cataloging Procedures Guide with some added data at the end if we have time. While all fields in a MARC record used to describe the item in hand are important, we tend to put an emphasis on these tags, so that's what we're going to work with first. I would love to go in a little deeper on the formatting of LC, Library of Congress control numbers, but we'll just have to settle for a simpler explanation today. I have linked the Library of Congress MARC description on the slide in case you wish to go down that rabbit hole. So long story short, in the book, we have this number 97-39059 as the Library of Congress control number. 2000 and earlier, the year 2000 and earlier publications had 2 digits for the year, the number that is appearing before the dash, and then 6 numbers for the serial. But if we're looking at this number, I'm only counting five. We need to add a 0 to make it a 6. So we're going to add that to the left of the 3 because serial numbers are right justified. Hyphens do not carry in the MARC record. So when you transcribe it into the MARC, we leave the indicators blank because they are undefined. And since this is the Library of Congress number, we'll use the subfield A and enter the 970-39059. And that added 0 completes the 6-digit serial number. So let's add this to our MARC record. So we already have a 010 in. We're going to leave those indicators blank, and then I'm going to enter the 970-39059. The ISBN for this book can be found in the CIP data as well as on the back cover. When we look at this book, we can only see a 10-digit ISBN. We transcribe the ISBN without the hyphens, so we leave the indicators blank because they are We leave the indicators blank because they are undefined. In the subfield A, we will enter the ISBN. I'm just going to copy it over from here. The format will change when we save. We don't include hyphens in the ISBN, and there is no punctuation used in the subfield A. While not required, since we are able to combine specific items on a single record, using a subfield Q to describe qualifying information is recommended. So in this record, we are going to use that subfield Q and enter in parentheses hardcover. And this is just the example. The 024 is the other standard identifier. It's used when a standard number or code is published on an item that can't be accommodated in another field, such as the 020 ISBN. The first indicator is the type of number, and the second indicator, if the number written on the item matches the scanned barcode, then we would enter a 0 for no difference or 1 if the scanned barcode does not match that written one. While we're looking at the back cover for that other standard identifier, we see this number that might be misconstrued as the 13-digit ISBN. I mean, it does match the 10-digit ISBN, except it begins with the 978. When actually you can see these 3 letters, EAN. Oh gosh. Sorry. buttons. Okay, yes. So the EAN stands for International Article Number. I have linked more information about these on here as well. So these 13 digits can go into the 0 to 4 with a first indicator of 3, which stands for the EAN number. The second indicator is 0 because when I scanned that barcode, there is no difference between the barcode and that EAN number. So we are going to enter that as a 0. And then in the subfield A, we are going to enter that EAN number. No hyphens, no spaces, and no periods at the end. So we are going to enter, sorry, my fingers are not working today. And notice how we don't have this already in here, so I'm going to add it. So 0, 2, 4, I say 3, 0, A, and then 9780590353403. So the core requirements in Evergreen, Indiana, and require at least one classification number. For time sake, let's stick with the 050, which is the Library of Congress call number. When you're checking to see if an item is in the Library of Congress catalog, use the ISBN or control number to get the correct item if it exists. So I've linked to the Library of Congress record for this book in the first indicator, which is why I entered a 0. We use a 0 in the second indicator when the call number listed is sourced from the Library of Congress. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure how to determine if it is from the Library of Congress or another organization. I do know if it doesn't match standardized LOC classification, then it is from another organization. Since I am transcribing it from the LC cataloged copy, I will enter a 0 in the second indicator. Also, that is what is in the Library of Congress's MARC record. We enter the classification number in a subfield A. The HAR 1998 is not part of the actual classification number. It's used to distinguish between other items with the same classification. So that is entered into a subfield B with no punctuation, so there's no ending period. So let's add that another field to our record, 050, 00, A, and then we are going to enter it as it is shows. So we'll use those capital letters. The period are 79835, and then add a second subfield for B, HAR 1998. Okay, now we need to go back to the 240. So we know that Sorcerer's Stone is not part of the original title. The original title is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone that was released in the UK and other European countries. The uniform title is found as an authorized heading with the name that is in the 100 or 110 or 111 tag. In our case, it's the 100 that we will be, since it is a personal name. I may have forgotten to add that to this slide. If we look up the authorized name title heading in the Library of Congress authority file, we see the uniform title listed, and we're going to enter that into our 240 field. So in the MARC, we are going to add we're going to add a 240 field with a first indicator of 1 because it is displayed. There are 0 non-filing characters, so we're going to enter a 0 in the second indicator. Correct. Sarah commented, if there's no Library of Congress classification in the book and you don't use it at your library, you don't need to add it to the record. There are other classification numbers that you can add to your record. But I went with the 050 for today just for, well, time's sake. So in the 240 with the second indicator of 0, we're going to enter a subfield A. Yes. Also, for 0, if you don't use the Library of Congress control number, don't delete it. Okay, so subfield A in the 240, we are going to enter the uniform title as it appears in the heading, which is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Field 240 does not end with punctuation unless the last word in the field is an abbreviation, initial, or letter, or data that ends with a mark of punctuation. So in this case, we're going to omit punctuation in our 240. Since I forgot to add it to the slides, let's go ahead and add our 100 field, which is our main entry for a personal name. So it's going to be a like the author's name that is associated with the item. We know that it is J.K. Rowling, so we are going to add her name to it based on the established heading created by the Library of Congress or other thesaurus, but Library of Congress is primary. So we are going to enter a first indicator of 1 in the 100 because we are using her surname first. Her surname is listed, so Rowling. We're going to enter a comma, space, and then for initials in the 100 field, we include a space between those letters. So J and then space, K, and then we use those periods for those initials. And then we could add a relator term if we wanted. And then so we will add a comma and then E and then author. Relator term is not required for a 100 field, but they're nice and helpful. There was a comment. So 240 is official title similar to how 100 is official author name. And yes, as Sarah points out, it is exactly like that. The 245 field, or the title statement, is where we will enter the title that appears on the title page, on the source. We will also include the statement of responsibility, any subtitle or remaining parts of the title, and names or parts or number of part if they exist. And for that, you think more along the lines of like when you're dealing with manga. We have our 245 field. I'm going to switch over to the MARC. Our first indicator is a 1 because we have a 100 field. If we didn't have a 1XX field in the record, we would enter a 0 for the first indicator. But since we have that personal name, we are going to enter a 1 in the first indicator. A 0 is going to be entered into the second indicator because there are no non-filing characters. The title is not starting with an article, the, an, or a. So it's going to be 0. So in the subfield A, we are going to enter the title as it appears, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And we are transcribing this as is found on the source, in our case, the title page in the subfield A. We do follow sentence case though, so only we capitalize the first word and any proper nouns as they appear in the title. Since we do not have any remaining title or part info, we can remove this colon and enter a space / which is what precedes a subfield C. I'm going to remove this B here. So we have a space / space. And then in the subfield C is where we enter the statement of responsibility as it appears on the item. And we can separate further statements of responsibility with a space / space. So on the title page, we have by J.K. Rowling. Notice how we did not use a space between the initials in the statement of responsibility, and then I'm going to enter a space, semicolon space, and then include illustrations by Mary. I think I've always pronounced it as Grand Pré. And notice that we have a diacritic, so I'm going to use the short key for that to include that information. So we have our 245 field, we have the title statement and our statement of responsibility. The 250 tag is where an addition statement is placed in the MARC record. Since our item has an addition statement on the item, we are going to enter it into that 250. So we're going to add the first American addition to the 250 statement. The indicators are undefined, so we will leave those blank. And I'm going to enter first American addition as it appears on the item. You might also see it spelled out or not spelled out. Like first, they might see the number 1 American edition. We prefer it be just transcribed as the front. Transcribe it as you see it from the item in hand if it is available. And addition statements do end with a terminal period. So you want to include a period at the end of the 250. Okay. I just got a question back to the 050. Why is it only entered as because I did not transcribe it correctly? So I forgot to add the 7 on the 050. So that is, we did not include that because I forgot to, so that is my fault. So thank you for catching that. The 264 field is used for production, publication, distribution, manufacture, and copyright notices. In some of the older records in our catalog, you will still see the 260 tag used, which was used in AACR2 rule records before RDA, and the 264 field was created. In this tag, we need to list the location of publication, the name of the publisher, and the date of publication. Because our publication date and copyright date are different, we need to list both of them. So we're actually going to have 2 264 tags in our record, one for the publication information and one for the copyright date. So in the 264, we are going to enter a second indicator of 1 since we are dealing with publication information. We pulled the location of the publisher from the TP Verso. Since it is still from the item, we do not need to enter it in brackets. So we'll enter New York, or NY on a subfield B is preceded by a space colon space. So I'm going to include that. So in the subfield B, we need to enter the name of the publisher as we see it on the title page, adding a comma between the publisher name and the remaining information. So I'm going to enter Arthur A. Levine books. I'm just going to use that comma, and imprint of Scholastic Press. The subfield C is preceded by a comma, so we are going to end that subfield B with a comma. And in the subfield C, we are going to include the publication year, which was taken next to the addition statement. So we will enter 1998. The subfield C does end with a period or other form of punctuation, whether it's a bracket or if like you're dealing with, I think, serials, you might have a dash, but if for a single date, you enter a period. For the second 264 tag and the copyright edition or for the copyright information, we need a second indicator of 4 because this is the copyright notice. And instead of a subfield A, we're going to use a subfield C. We're going to enter the copyright symbol and then enter the copyright date, which for this book is 1997. A 264 with a second indicator of 4 does not end with a period. The physical description is used to physically describe the item. How many pages are in the item and are they numbered? Does the item have illustrations and what are the dimensions? All pages in the item need to be considered, even introductory pages. So I noted that the content pages had Roman numerals up to the number 6. So we need to include that in the subfield A. So I'm going to enter a VI to represent that the farthest Roman numeral, which is 6, enter a comma, and then we're going to enter the pagination of the item, which is 309 pages. We do have illustrations, so we are going to use a space, comma, or space, colon, space at the end of the subfield A, and in the subfield B include the term illustrations. And then in the subfield C, which is preceded by a space, semicolon, space, again, all of this, eventually you will probably remember it, but this is all taken from the Library of Congress MARC 21 bibliographic format. So if you need to look back at punctuation, if there's a space, when you use a colon or a semicolon, it is written out there. So in the subfield C, which is where we enter the dimensions, we are going to enter 24 because the item is taller than it is wide. So we're just going to enter the height. And so we have 24 centimeters. And normally cm or centimeters does not end in a period because it isn't, I am so sorry. Normally, centimeters does not end in a period because it is not an abbreviation. It's a form of measurement. However, since we are going to add series information in this MARC record, which includes a 490, we add a period to the end of the subfield C in this, or at the end of the centimeter measurement. So for cm, if there is a 490 in the record, add an ending period. If there is not a 490, we do not include a period at the end of centimeters. Okay, so we left off with the physical description and that we ended a period on the end of that centimeter measurement because we were adding a 490. So let's talk about the 490, which is the series statement for a series title. The 490 is where we enter series information that is transcribed from the item itself or from an external source like Goodreads, Fantastic Fiction, the author's website, Novelist, etc. The first indicator is used to define whether or not the series statement is traced. What that means is, are we going to use a corresponding 8xx field as an added entry? Is this series established in our or Evergreen, Indiana, or the Library of Congress's authority file? And for our example, the answer is yes. So since we are chasing the series, we are going to enter a 1 in the first indicator, and second indicator is undefined, so we're going to leave that blank. Now, this is my having a little bit of fun. If we just look at this item as a whole, as it has just come out, like if it just came out in 1998, there is no true series statement on the item. I mean, it's been 25 years since this item was actually released, and the series has been released in its entirety. We know that it's part of a series. But if we were to catalog this as if it was just published, we might not know that it is part of a series, so we have to look elsewhere. Procedures dictate that if we enter the series statement as it was found somewhere other than the source, we enter it in brackets. If we pretend that we are entering this just as it is being published, we could use the established heading from the Evergreen Authority file or Library of Congress as our subfield A. We would still enter it in brackets since it was taken from an outside source. Since the item also does not have a series number anywhere, we also need to find it from an external source. Each subfield is going to be enclosed into or with their own brackets. So, but for today, we are going to pull Harry Potter from the title and enter the numeration in brackets. And the subfield V is preceded by a space, semicolon space. So we're going to enter the semicolon, add a subfield V, and in brackets, we are going to enter book 1. If we were pulling it from another, or if we were pulling the title from the established heading, we could have it might look like this. Because we are using brackets in the 490 subfield V, we need to include a 500 note field to describe where we pulled the information from. So since the indicators are undefined, we are going to leave those blank. A single subfield A will be used to enter the text. The 500 field does end with a period unless another mark of punctuation is present. So in this 500, we are going to enter, let's say I took the numeration from novelist, so I'm going to enter, and there is no specific way on how to enter this note. You could say series number from author's website, series numeration from Goodreads, wherever you get it. And there's no controlled vocabulary for a 500 note. It is free text. If I enter a traced 490, I usually go ahead and enter the corresponding 8XX field. So we're going to skip to that now. We know that there's an established heading, so let's take a look at what it is. I do have a habit of looking at the Library of Congress authority file before looking at the Evergreen Indiana authority file. The Library of Congress is in ours. So in this brief instance, we can determine that it's going to be the same, but we can look at both. So the Library of Congress authorities, I'm going to look up the name title heading. So Rowling, remember it's going to match the name, the author name is going to match what is entered into the 100, the personal name. So we are going to enter it with those 2 spaces, and then we're going to enter the title. Or what as close to it as you can if you're not actually quite sure what the name is. So we have the authorized heading here for Harry Potter series. And so if we were to look it up in the Evergreen authority file, we would enter the same thing. So Rowling, J, remember that space, and then enter Harry Potter series. Once we select the authority type for here, I believe we just select author, and it should find it in here, but we know our authority file is not as searchable as, say, the Library of Congress. So we will go ahead and just stick with what is in here. So in the 800 field for our record, we are going to enter a first indicator of 1, which is telling us that the personal name form begins with the surname. The second indicator is undefined, so we will leave that blank. So we are going to use this subfield A to enter the authorized name. Again, this is going to match what is entered into the 100 field, though we would exclude any related terms we may have added. So we have Rowling, J space K. We have that period. So we have next a subfield T, which is where the title is going to appear, the title of the series. So Harry Potter series. Next, we want to enter the numeration, which is in a subfield V and is preceded by a space semicolon. So we enter numerations as 2 or 3 digits, depending on how many titles there are in a series. The numbers 1 through 9 are preceded by a 0, and then 10 plus are entered as is. If there were more than 100, there would be 2 zeros preceding 1 through 9 and 1 0 preceding 10 plus. So here we're going to enter, since there are only 7 books in the series, we're going to enter 0, 1. The subfield V does end with a mark of punctuation. So in this case, we are ending it with a period. Okay, let's go back to the 500s. The 505 is used for titles of separate works or parts of an item or the table of contents. For this book, we have the table of contents that we can list. There are 2 types of content notes that can be created for records based on what is entered in the second indicator. A blank second indicator means that we are entering basic content notes, and a 0 is that the notes are enhanced. Basic contents are entered in a single instance of a subfield A. Enhanced notes are entered in duplicate subfields after or outside of a subfield A. So since we're just having using table of contents in this instance, we are going to enter that in here. Let me see if I can copy and paste this, because that is a lot of information. I may already have a MARC record filled out for this, so okay, so in our 505 field, we are going to enter the contents. Each chapter name is going to be in sentence case, so we will capitalize the first word and proper nouns, and then each title is separated by a space, double dash, space, and then it ends with a period. Let's see, we have about 10 minutes left, so let's just see how far we can go. The 6XX fields, while we can easily just include the headings included in the CIP data, I think we can do a little better than what is just listed in the book. Similar to the 1XX and 8XX fields we've already covered, we use established headings in the 6XX fields. For our title, we can enter a 600 fields for personal name, which would be, we can add Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley as primary character names. We enter those in the with a subfield A, first indicator of 1, because we are using the surname first. We are also going to include a why can't I think of the term? Free-floating subdivision, which is juvenile fiction. So we can include that in our subfield, because this is a book that is considered for ages less than 15, the age of 15. So we are going to add those to our record. We're also going to add some topical terms, or the 650 field. This is just where we enter where the element is a topical term. So the subject, so like magic, wizards, witches, things like that. First indicator is going to be a 1 because this is the primary level of the subject. We use a second indicator of 0, which is where we note where the heading was retrieved. So the 0 in the second indicator of the 6XX fields means that we are taking it from the Library of Congress subject headings thesaurus. So for our topics for this book, we can add magic, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, where if you look at the heading, it's going to also include imaginary organization in parentheses, witches and wizards. We could also include a geographic name in a 651. First indicator is undefined, and in this case, we are using from the Library of Congress, the subject heading thesaurus, so we'll enter a 0, and then we can enter England in the subfield A. So the 655 genre form turn index, this is where we can designate the genre or what the book is, like the genre, if it's like fantasy fiction or science fiction, things like that. Form is not really necessary, at least for this item, because it's a book. You might find those more with audiobooks, large print, things like that. So in our case, the first indicator is a basic heading. So we are just going to, which means that there's just going to be a single subfield. Second indicator of 7, which is tells us that we are going to enter where we retrieved the term, what source. We're going to enter the code in a subfield 2. So in this instance, we are entering fantasy fiction with a subfield 2 of LCGFT. One thing I didn't mention is the 6XX fields end with a period or ending punctuation. If there is a subfield 2 or a few others like numeral subfields, the period comes before the subfield 2. So we would have the subfield A, fantasy fiction period, and then add the subfield 2 with the code. The 700 field is used for additional contributors to a work, like more authors, illustrators, narrators, performers, and editors. For our record, we are going to use a first indicator of 1 because the format for this name is surname, forename. Second indicator is left blank. In the subfield A, we will enter the illustrator's name, note the diacritic, and add a relator term in a subfield E. So we know the relationship between the name and the work. And a subfield E or 700 can end with ending punctuation. All right, before we add any more fields, let's update the fixed fields, because that is an important thing to remember to update in your MARC records, because those help searchability in the MARC record. So I'm going to slide in here real quick and fix that. So the audience, we would probably consider this as pre-adolescent because of that, the age range that it is for. We use the adolescent D for usually for young adult material. I'm going to just update this litfit as a 1 because it is fiction. There is no index. We do want to change the dates since the publication and copyright date are different. I'm going to change that to a T, enter the pub date first, and then the copyright date and date too. Let's also update the country, which is the country code. So since it's in New York, we want to enter an NY and U for United States. I think for the rest of that, it looks fine. So I think we are good to go. Oh, no, we need the illustrations because it is illustrated. We want to include an A for illustrations. So in the 3 minutes that we have left, there are there's more data that we could add to this. We can add the varying form of the title, which is used, like if the title appeared differently on the cover than on the title page, we would enter it here. Also, if we were dealing with parallel titles for like foreign language edition, we could enter the parallel title here. In this case, we are using the 246 to include an alternate form of the title for searchability because "and" is spelled out in the title, but it could also be searched with an ampersand. So we are going to add a 246 subfield A with Harry Potter and with an ampersand, the Sorcerer's Stone. General note, we included a note to describe where we retrieve the series information, but there are a couple other notes we could add, like sequel information or anything written on the spine. In this case, we could include the sequel, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Summary, you want to make sure you try to include a 520 statement or summary statement for the item. The indicators would be blank. One, the first indicator, if it's blank, it's for a summary. Second indicator is blank because it is undefined. If you are taking it directly from the item, use quotation marks. If you are retrieving the synopsis from another source, use quotation marks and include a double dash at the end. You can include a subfield C and describe where you retrieved the synopsis from. We can include target audience note, which includes interest grade level that was taken from Scholastic's website. You can include Lexile measure numbers if there is Lexile number available. We can include study program notes, which includes accelerated reader and reading counts if it is available there. Awards notes, if you would like to. For this example, Harry Potter, the first one, won the Elliott Rosewater Indiana High School Award in 2000-2001 and was a ALA Notable Children's Book winner in 1999 for middle readers. Are there any questions? Monica, the chair of the cataloging committee, wants to remind everyone that there are cataloging committee members assigned to your regions. If you ever have cataloging questions, please feel free to reach out to them, especially if you don't feel comfortable sending out a question on the listserv. Please do not hesitate to reach out to them. They are full of information, much more information than I have, and even tell you things correctly too. So please don't hesitate to reach out to myself with any questions. Get a hold of your regional contact if you want. If you are still here, I'm going to bring up that list real quick or show you where you can find it because Monica already posted that link. So for example, Central Region 5, Charles is your cataloging committee. Contact Anita Brown is for Northwest or Region 1. Monica is Region 8 and so forth. So you can find their email addresses on the cataloging contact form and also on the committee contact form.